Tonight, Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden, two leaders, both under pressure, both facing questions about their political future. A new call for Trudeau to resign from one of his own MPs. The email obtained by CBC News sent to the entire Liberal caucus. Biden fires back and stands firm after a disastrous debate.
When you get knocked down, you get back up.
But could he really be replaced on the ballot? And hundreds in Newfoundland pay their respects to an unknown soldier.
I can't describe the emotion.
We hope you will be proud.
A final farewell to a fallen son.
From CBC News, this is The National with Ian Hennemensing.
Tonight, a new call for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to step down from a Liberal member of Parliament. In a leaked email obtained by CBC News, Wayne Long is asking the Liberal caucus to support a push for Trudeau to resign as party leader. The Liberals have been trailing in the polls and coming off a defeat in a Toronto by-election, a race some consider an informal referendum on his leadership. Now, Long, who represents St. John, New Brunswick, says Trudeau needs to leave for the good of the country. Rafi Bouchikanian shows us the new public and private pushback against a leader who says he's not leaving.
Justin Trudeau back in the GTA for the first time since the Liberals' stunning loss in the historically safe riding of Toronto St. Paul's earlier this week, insisting his sights are set on the next federal election.
Everyone starts that election with 0 votes.
But the embrace from some in his own caucus is not as warm. CBC News has obtained an email sent by Liberal MP Wayne Long to the entire caucus. He writes, "For the future of our party and for the good of our country, we need new leadership and a new direction. The voters have spoken loud and clear. They want change. I agree." And then there's this.
I heard him on more than one occasion say that there is a campaign to push the Prime Minister out the door.
This freelance columnist for the Toronto Star says he overheard Trudeau's Environment Minister making phone calls to Liberals while waiting for a train, discussing the internal unhappiness surrounding Trudeau. "If we're not trying to address it, it will fester," Stephen Guilbeault reportedly said, and it makes it more difficult for the boss to stay. The last thing we should do is ignore this.
He was not 100% sure that the Prime Minister could survive this.
Trudeau's former Environment Minister first told CBC News she believes it's time for him to go. It's time for new ideas, new energy, and a new leader. There's too much at stake in this election, especially on the economy and the climate, Catherine McKenna said in a statement. This pollster says that grumbling may only grow.
I think we expected a close race in Toronto Centre, but losing it is a symbol of how far I think the Liberal Party and Mr. Trudeau in particular has fallen.
Guilbeault said in a statement, one-sided conversations do not reflect the open and honest exchanges he routinely has with colleagues, and Trudeau has his full support. The Prime Minister's office has declined to comment. Rafi Bouchikanian on CBC News, Ottawa.
Let's bring in David Cochrane, host of Power and Politics. So, David, we've heard from a former cabinet minister and now a sitting MP. How significant is all of this?
Yeah, Ian, to this point, there's been a lot of public talk from former Liberals about the need for the Prime Minister to go. But this email from Wayne Long, that is the first open push for change from inside the current Liberal caucus. Some context, though, Wayne Long disagreed with the Prime Minister in the past, and he's not running again. The first reply to Long's email was from Newfoundland MP Ken McDonald, who wrote, "Well said," with an exclamation point. But that's another critic of the Prime Minister who's also not running again. To this point, nobody who is sticking around has publicly said Trudeau must go, and that would clearly be another tipping point. The problem, Ian, is that once it starts, it doesn't stop. Others pile on, it fuels media stories, it makes it impossible for cabinet ministers and MPs to do public events without this being the thing everyone wants to talk about. So they need to get caucus settled and on board, or a reset and a rebound. It's just impossible.
And so what are the options for the Prime Minister to deal with this?
Well, the MPs I heard from want change, either a change in leader, a change in senior staff, or a change in cabinet. And right now, Justin Trudeau's not going anywhere. Changing his senior staff might make caucus happy, but does nothing to really help them with voters. So that leaves cabinet, but even there's risk. Toronto St. Paul's was vacant because they shuffled the cabinet last year. Carolyn Bennett left, they lost the seat. There's another by-election coming up in Montreal. David Lametti dropped from cabinet at the same time as Bennett. He quit his seat, and that seat is now at risk. So does yet another cabinet shuffle spark yet another retirement and yet another by-election they may not win but can't afford to lose? So really, they're stuck between this loud internal demand for change and the reality that big change could make things even worse for them publicly and politically.
It is a long weekend, David, but keep your phone on.
All right, thanks, Ian.
You can add the New York Times editorial board to the critics calling on Joe Biden to drop out of the presidential race. This after his poor performance last night in the debate. Paul Hunter now with fallout from that debate and how Biden is fighting back.
Even as they chanted 4 more years, surely they all wondered what on earth happened with Joe Biden at that debate. Is he indeed too old and mentally unfit for office?
I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious.
Biden said he knows he's lost a step or two, but then took this shot at Donald Trump.
Well, I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth.
And as for himself,
when you get knocked down, you get back up.
the crowd roared, perhaps thinking, where was this guy on stage at the debate? Because that Joe Biden, with his age a key issue going in, stumbled often and badly.
Eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Almost immediately, private whispers among Democrats that Biden's no longer up for the job. Even vehemently anti-Trump Republicans weighed in.
Nothing else matters but keeping Trump out of the White House. The problem is, Joe Biden last night, I think, conclusively showed that he can't defeat Trump. So if I'm a Democrat right now, I've got to find somebody who can beat Trump.
Outside the White House, voters signaled dismay and deep concern.
I don't know what to think. I don't know if he's suitable to be running, and I know Donald Trump isn't suitable to be running, and I'm quite scared.
All of it fodder for Donald Trump, now using Biden's stumbling for mockery.
He studied very hard. He studied so hard that he didn't know what the hell he was doing.
And yet, said Biden,
And I would not be running again if I didn't believe with all my heart and soul I can do this job.
yes, you can, they chanted, even as so many now wonder, but can he really?
Paul, the other thing a lot of people are wondering is, can he be replaced as the Democratic nominee at this point?
Yeah, can you believe we're even talking about this, Ian? Yes, there's a way, and no, it's not too late. But key to replacing him is it'd be a heck of a lot easier if Biden agrees to it. Forcing him off the ticket is a whole other ballgame. But if he agrees to go and he sets free all the delegates he won in the primaries, you could have an open nominating convention this summer to find someone new. And that is entirely within party rules.
And then, of course, you need those new candidates.
Yeah, Vice President Kamala Harris is an obvious option, but her polling numbers are less than excellent. Other names bandied about include Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan, and Gavin Newsom, governor of California. But it really hinges on Biden willingly stepping aside. Someone would have to sit him down and say, you know, it's for the good of the country, Joe, you did your job, but it's time. At that rally today, Biden gave no hint he's even thinking about that. Democrats have until their convention in August to get this sorted. It's a tiny window of opportunity, Ian, but it's there.
Paul Hunter in Washington. Now to late breaking news that could affect thousands of travelers this weekend. In a surprise move, WestJet mechanics are now on strike. The job action comes just one day after the federal labor minister imposed binding arbitration. The union says the airline's unwillingness to negotiate made the strike inevitable. WestJet says it is outraged and is expecting severe travel disruptions if the strike isn't called off immediately. Passengers are being warned to check the status of their flights before leaving for the airport. We can tell you more tonight about the new sexual assault allegations against billionaire businessman Frank Stronach. CBC News has obtained new court documents. Thomas Dagla is about to take us through them, but he begins with what happened when he tracked Stronach down today.
Outside Frank Stronach's restaurant in Aurora, north of Toronto, we caught up with the billionaire businessman. But he wouldn't go on camera.
Just go away with the camera.
And declined to comment when we asked him about the 13 criminal charges he's facing.
Are you able to respond to the allegations against you?
No comments.
Do you have any message for the accusers?
New court documents obtained by CBC News show the latest allegations go as far back as 1977, with a series of more recent sexual assault charges and one allegation from this past February after Stronach had turned 91.
This is not an uncommon thing where one complainant comes forward about a sexual assault allegation related to a particular person, and that encourages other complainants perhaps to come forward.
Stronach's lawyer, Brian Greenspan, said earlier this week Mr. Stronach denies and will vigorously defend these further untested allegations. Accused of rape and forcible confinement, police allege the assaults happened in Aurora, Toronto, and elsewhere in Ontario. Stronach first made his fortune with auto parts giant Magna International.
And Shaman Ghost takes the Queen's plate.
Then delved into horse racing and even politics, running as a federal liberal in 1988, and later founding a new party in his native Austria. Stronach's past is now under scrutiny, with Peel Regional Police willing to pursue charges involving decades-old allegations.
The criminal court system says, look, if somebody comes forward today, it doesn't matter that the allegation was 40 or 50 years ago.
Stronach took down my phone number and insists he'll give his version of events soon. He's due to appear in court July 8th. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Aurora, Ontario.
Officials in Yukon say they still don't know if cyanide was released into the environment 4 days after a landslide at a gold mine. It happened about 500 kilometers north of Whitehorse at the Eagle Gold Mine, which sits on the traditional territory of the First Nation of Nacho-Nyak-Dun. The company that operates the mine uses the cyanide to help extract the gold, but how they do that is being questioned. Lindsay Duncombe is in Whitehorse tonight.
This is a catastrophe and is unfolding before us.
This civil engineering consultant crashed a media briefing worried about what's happening at the Eagle Mine.
You don't need a test to find dead fish. So we really want to know, are your officers looking at the organisms?
This is the aftermath of the landslide at the open pit gold mine. Much of the pit wall collapsed. A worker was inside this loader when it happened. He escaped with minor injuries. No one was seriously hurt.
We are not satisfied with industry and public government's response to this catastrophic event. We're concerned of the health of the land, the water, the fish, and the animals.
The mine uses a process known as heap leaching. Cyanide solution is sprayed on an open pit of crushed ore, collecting the metal on a plastic surface. Earlier this year, 5 workers died after a similar heap leach collapse at a Canadian-owned gold mine in Turkey. Mining Watch Canada says companies mine this way because it's cheap.
This is a very dangerous method of extracting gold from rock.
When the heap collapsed, miners rushed to contain the spill. It's unclear if they got it all.
The exact amount of material that moved is currently not known to us.
The territory says the water in Mayo, a community 85 kilometers south, is safe to drink. Water results from the mine site should be available next week.
Well, it means I have to look for work.
Raymond Cameron is one of 500 people who work at the Eagle Mine. He's been laid off for at least 13 weeks.
I think it'd be a miracle if they fixed everything in 13 weeks. That's a lot of damage.
Victoria Gold hasn't made any public statements since Monday. Its stock has tanked, and at this point, it's unclear if it has the cash needed to clean up and reopen. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Whitehorse.
CBC News and Radio Canada have learned Lieutenant General Jennie Carignan will be Canada's next Chief of Defence Staff. She'll be the first woman to be in charge of the armed forces. It's expected Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will formally announce the appointment on Tuesday. Iran will soon have a new president after a snap election to replace Ibrahim Raisi, who died in a helicopter crash last month. 4 candidates were on the ballot, but as Sasha Petrusik explains, it's unlikely the vote will bring meaningful change.
The snap election may have been unexpected, but few predict big surprises in the Islamic regime's hard line. Many see no point in even voting. I don't think it makes any difference what we say, he says. Iran's show of democracy is tightly controlled. All 4 candidates have been carefully vetted. The 2 favored ones are staunch conservatives, backing Iran's ongoing confrontation with the U.S. and Israel. Saeed Jalili says he would ramp it up. Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf says world powers already envy Iran's strength. But the candidate who's raised eyebrows the most is Masoud Pezeshkian, a low-profile moderate who's questioned arrests of women who refuse to wear the hijab. And he distances himself from violent crackdowns ending months of protests last year in support of Masa Amini, who died in the custody of morality police. But like all candidates, Pezeshkian has vowed ultimate loyalty to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. It's his choice of president that counts the most. Though he urges people to vote because he says a good turnout protects Iran's honor.
The whole idea is to legitimize the system again, especially after Masa Amini protests.
Experts say it doesn't really matter who becomes president, since he just takes orders from Khamenei.
Amongst the younger generation, this government is no longer a legitimate government, just a bunch of puppets.
The results of these elections may not be trusted, but it may not matter, as long as clerics call the shots. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
The U.S. military has once again dismantled its humanitarian pier in Gaza over bad sea conditions. It's another blow to the program that's faced non-stop obstacles since its construction in May, including tens of millions of dollars in weather damage. Military officials say the pier may not be put back unless aid agencies are able to move goods into Gaza again. Princess Anne is now recovering at home after a 5-day hospital stay for a head injury. The 73-year-old sister of King Charles was released earlier today after treatment for minor injuries and a concussion, the cause of which hasn't been disclosed. She's expected to make a full recovery. That injury forced Princess Anne to cancel a trip to Canada to mark the 100th anniversary of the National War Memorial in St. John's. And today, a somber ceremony marked the return of an unknown soldier. The homecoming, a century in the making. Next. Plus, Joe Biden's very bad night.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID.
Could Democrats replace him? Our panel breaks it down. And later, the huge catch they weren't expecting.
He said, "What is it?" I said, "I don't know yet. All I know is big."
What New Brunswick fishermen pulled out of the water. We're back in 2.
I'm excited. Not even a hockey mom. I'm excited.
Surprise guest Celine Dion lighting up the NHL draft tonight with her hockey mom spirit. The Quebec superstar was on hand to announce the 5th overall pick for Montreal. Habs went with Russian forward Ivan Demidov. Newfoundland and Labrador's unknown soldier who fought and died in the First World War is now lying in state in St. John's. As Peter Cowan shows us, people were eager to pay their respects more than a century after he left home.
Hundreds lined up to honor a soldier they never knew, more than 100 years after he left Newfoundland for war. Even in the pouring rain, they waited for their moment to say thanks.
There's no mud, there's no rats, there's no dysentery, and there's no bullets flying at me. I don't think I could say the same for that man lying in there.
I can't describe the emotions.
For years, Frank Sullivan pushed for the National War Memorial in St. John's to have its own tomb for the unknown soldier. During the First and Second World War, Newfoundland wasn't part of Canada. The unknown soldier at the War Memorial in Ottawa came from Vimy Ridge. Newfoundlanders didn't fight there.
He doesn't represent the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. So this is why I started this.
The remains of this soldier were unearthed from a field in France earlier this year, where he fought and died. A soldier title like this one was found in his grave, along with his boots and pieces of uniform.
It was overwhelming with emotion.
The province's premier was visibly emotional at times during his own private moment.
We hope he would be proud. We hope he would know that the people of Newfoundland and Labrador showed up for him.
For those who showed up, it's not just history, it's often personal. 1/3 of young men from here fought in the First World War.
I'm here representing my grandfather.
Dave Maloney's grandfather was one of the lucky ones. He came home.
I mean, they took the call, they went, and some of them never came back.
The unknown soldier will lie in state until Monday, Memorial Day in this province, when the remains will be entombed at the War Memorial. People will gather to say thank you and farewell to a fallen son of Newfoundland on behalf of all of those who never came home. Peter Cowan, CBC News, St. John's.
And we'll have special Memorial Day coverage from St. John's on Monday. Heather Hiscox will commemorate the past, present, and future. You can watch on CBC TV, CBC News Network, and everywhere you stream CBC News. And we want to take a moment now to wish one of our colleagues all the best. Jeannie Lee has retired.
Once housing sales are back, so is mortgage borrowing.
Always smart, always driven. For almost 30 years, Jeannie helped Canadians navigate the world of business news. From the internet boom and dot-com bubble to the mortgage crisis to the pandemic, she was there making sense of it all.
Suddenly, for everybody that was thinking, you know what, this coronavirus is not a thing, it's now become a thing.
For those of us who worked closely with Jeannie over the years, we'll miss her sense of humor, wit, and warmth.
You've heard that old joke, why bash your head against the wall?
No, I haven't heard this old joke, but I'm about to hear the punchline.
Happy retirement, Jeannie. The first round of voting in France's legislative elections gets underway on Sunday, with far-right politicians surging in the polls. The role women are playing in a shifting political landscape. Plus, in its war against Ukraine, Russia is looking for ways to get around international sanctions.
Russia has used front companies in order to procure items that it wants but can't get.
A CBC News investigation follows a complex trail that runs right through Canada. And panic in the Democratic Party after Joe Biden's unsteady debate performance.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Could they actually replace him? Our panel looks at what might happen next. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next. Torrential rain has caused chaos in New Delhi. The roof collapsed at an airport, killing one person. Flooded streets led to massive traffic jams. The city saw more rain in one day than in the rest of the month. Voting in France's parliamentary election begins on Sunday, a vote that could see a significant shift to the far right. And as Chris Brown tells us from France, it could be in part because of the political leanings of French women.
This may be France's most divisive election ever. As the far-right Rassemblement National surges, opponents are desperate to stop its momentum.
When the far-right pretends that it defends women's rights, it actually takes it as a pretext to be racist and to be xenophobic.
Traditional allegiances here are shifting. In the recent European elections, more women than men supported the RN, as it's known, a stunning reversal from just a few years ago. And while it remains intensely anti-immigrant, and many would say anti-Muslim, the party has rebranded itself with new policies and faces.
A big reason why the Rassemblement National has been able to expand its base of supporters is its youthful leader, Jordan Bardella. He's just 28 years old and could be France's next prime minister.
Bardella has made a special plea to women, promising to guarantee their freedoms. Edwige Diaz, one of the RN's most prominent female members, plays up the threat to French women from what she calls radical Islam, rather than domestic abuse generally.
In our country, radical Islamism is proliferating because there are no measures aiming to limit immigration.
We visited Moret-sur-Loing, where the far right's vote has surged in recent years, and met Lydia Lecoq.
He has good ideas, so why not give the job to someone who's young like Bardella? Also, he's cute.
For President Emmanuel Macron, dissolving parliament and essentially daring people to vote for the far right was a big gamble for him, and many say for France as well.
They say that I'm not totally French, and I'm born here. So I don't think that they want me to be here. So I'm worried a lot.
Macron may be hoping people get cold feet, but days before the first voting, the far right still appears strong. Chris Brown, CBC News, Paris.
Now it's time to break down the stories shaping our world. We investigate leaked info on microelectronics sold to Russia and find links to a Toronto address.
Canada can and is used for illicit finance and trade purposes.
But first, let's tackle the urgent questions facing U.S. Democrats.
Everyone says they're in panic mode this morning, and last night there was no hiding from that camera.
Dealing with everything we have to do with.
How much damage has Joe Biden sustained from his painful, faltering debate?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Will Biden stay on? Can the party even get rid of him? Here's how things look from Capitol Hill. Let's start with Philip Bump, Washington Post columnist. And Philip, I read there was panic among a lot of Democrats last night during the debate. 24 hours later, what do you think the mood is?
Well, I think that the panic has abated only slightly, right, in the way that, when you're startled severely, it takes a while to wear off. There's been a lot of concern, primarily because this was understood to be one of Joe Biden's most significant weaknesses, this idea that people viewed him as old. And it was one of the few chances that he had to speak to a large audience, demonstrate that he wasn't. And of course, the opposite occurred. There are a lot of, obviously, sober minds reminding folks, look, we have to see what happens with the polls. We have to see if this has an effect. Viewership was down relative to 2020. There are all these ways in which this may not be the disaster that it seemed like last night, but that too takes some time to resolve. We don't know yet if this is going to be something that negatively affects his poll numbers. It may be. And so a lot of people are on tenterhooks waiting to see what happens, but with a very strong sense that this went about as badly as it could have.
Let's go to the CBC's Alex Panetta in Washington. Alex, some prominent Democrats voiced their support for the president.
Listen, people can debate on style points, but ultimately this election and who is the president of the United States has to be about substance. And the contrast is clear.
You don't turn your back because of one performance. What kind of party does that?
So, Alex, what should we make of the words of support?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are a lot of Democrats in this country who would be happy to replace their nominee with someone younger and more dynamic. But I want to talk about the difference between desiring something and acting on it. Democrats, many Democrats, maybe a third or more, depending on the polls you look at, would love to see someone replace Biden. Just as an example, just personal anecdote. This morning, I was on my way to work, walked past a neighbor's house, a local Democrat, quite active, and I saw him this morning, and he made a slitting motion across his throat, basically to convey the message, we're dead in November, based on what he saw last night in the debate. But you're not seeing that desire translate into a critical mass yet of action, into this tipping point. We just heard from a couple of Democrats who remain supportive of the president. Probably the most important vote of confidence today came from Barack Obama, who's remains the most popular member within that party, who expressed confidence and tweeted a link to a fundraising page for Biden's campaign, and reminded people that he had a bad debate in 2012 too. So he might be nervous. All Democrats might be a little nervous after that debacle yesterday, but it doesn't look like they're ousting him.
Philip, for our Canadian audience not familiar with the process in the United States, when you have a presumptive nominee, particularly a sitting president, is there a mechanism to get him to step aside? And if so, what would that look like?
Well, there isn't really a formal mechanism to try and get someone out of that position. There certainly are rules that are in place that the party has adopted in order, you know, should he, for example, be abducted by space aliens. They have a process in place at various stages in order to actually replace the nominee. I think it's important to remember, this is a party process. The party can do whatever it wants to do, right? There's been a lot of discussion about what the rules are. The party sets those rules. They can go into a meeting of the rules committee, they can change the rules, and they can make the rules be whatever they want to be. So there are a lot of ways that this could go down. I think the fundamental question that hangs over a lot of this right now is, is Joe Biden going to choose to stand aside, which makes it obviously much, much easier. And I think that would be, if Joe Biden ends up adopting the nominee, that would be the process by which it happens. But the second is, how do they avoid the sort of giant fight that gives opportunity to all those you know, Democrats who are champing at the bit? Yes, there are a lot of Democrats who would love to be the nominee, but they don't want to go through a gigantic fight in which people are sniping at one another and they basically erode Democratic support for whoever comes out of that. So those are the things that the party is considering. They're very nervous about Joe Biden. They would love if there was some magic thing that occurred where all of a sudden there was an extremely popular person who became the nominee instead, but that's not going to happen. And so it's just a lot of people saying, let's see what happens over the next week or two, and then playing it by ear from there.
And Alex, we have about a minute left. What do you think is going to happen over the next week or two, or what are you looking for?
Yeah, what I'll be looking for is, first of all, the polls and the reaction to the polls. What's very important to remember is the people who watch that debate are primarily extremely engaged Americans, people who care a lot about politics. And people who care a lot about politics overwhelmingly have their minds made up. What'll be interesting to see is whether that critical cohort of Americans, people who don't care that much about politics, who were not watching the debate, how they react. And their reaction will, in part, be based on upon what they hear from people who have watched it, like us, and what they see in social media in terms of clips. And, you know, if the polls get even worse for Biden, then you might start seeing a real panic. But I don't think there's an easy way out for Democrats. You know, whether you stick with the president or you replace him with someone like Kamala Harris, who's potentially even less popular than Biden, or if you bypass Harris at the convention and go with someone like Gretchen Whitmer, who is popular in her swing state of Michigan, but then you might be accused of disrespecting an African-American woman who would have been the backup plan in ordinary times to the president. It's a messy outcome no matter what happens. And last night made the world a whole lot messier for Democrats entering the general election season.
Philip, I have 15 seconds. Maybe this isn't fair, but I'll ask you, do you think Joe Biden will be on the ballot in November?
At this point, I do, yeah.
All right. Nice quick answer. Philip Bump, Alex Panetta, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, behind Russia's war in Ukraine, efforts to skirt international sanctions.
Foreign nation states are working hard to acquire our most sensitive technologies.
How a Toronto address is linked to the smuggling of crucial electronics. A CBC News exclusive investigation is next. We're on the trail of illegal exports that can fuel Russia's war machine.
Foreign nation states are working hard to acquire our most sensitive technologies.
Our exclusive investigation pointed to a suburban Toronto address and then well beyond there.
This is one of the things that raises some eyebrows.
All of this against the backdrop of another deadly attack on Ukraine. So what connection is there between that Toronto address and efforts to skirt sanctions? Ben McCoo breaks down what he found and shows us what the stakes might be for people in Ukraine.
I'm in a quiet neighborhood in Toronto. There's family homes, elementary schools, box stores. So what if I told you that one of the addresses around here appears to be connected to smuggling $80 million worth of microelectronics to Russia for its war in Ukraine? I'm trying to track down who's behind that address, and I have a lead. It's a murky tale that spans Canadian suburbia, the Caribbean, China, to Moscow. In modern warfare, microelectronics are the lifeblood sustaining almost all weapons.
The occupiers have a significant advantage in artillery. They have much more missiles and planes than we ever had.
But Russia is short on supplies, so it's turned to covertly tapping into places like Canada and the US for everything from semiconductors to microchips. Countries they're sanctioned from buying from. But two independent sources gave me a cache of raw Russian import data from 2023. Thousands of transactions showing technologies sent to Russia. And the curious thing was, a company called Alberton Enterprises appears in at least 1,400 shipments. And next to it, that business address in Toronto. Government records show the company got a license to operate in Ontario in 2015. But check this out. Alberton is actually a British Virgin Islands company, incorporated 3 years earlier.
My initial reaction was that this looked like a really egregious breach of Canada's Special Economic Measures Act. This is quite interesting, right?
I shared what I found with Jessica Davis, a financial crimes expert, previously with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service.
So the kind of things that we're talking about in this case, the number of transactions, the types of technologies, point to or suggest possible sanctions evasion through a Canadian company.
So is this part of a broader scheme to feed the Kremlin war machine with electronics using this Canadian address? And is anyone doing anything about it?
Here in Washington, American officials are serious about going after companies who are selling electronics to Russia.
Matt Axelrod leads the Disruptive Technology Strike Force, a law enforcement unit assembled a year into Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Foreign nation states are working hard to acquire our most sensitive technologies. We're working even harder to stop them.
So if companies are providing Russia with those electronics, they'd be breaking the law and evading international sanctions.
The Russians are not just throwing up their hands and saying, oh, we give up. They are being creative at ways to evade our rules. Russia has used front companies in order to procure items that it wants but can't get legitimately, and it's using front companies now to procure microelectronics.
Axelrod's work took him to Ukraine, where he saw firsthand how microelectronics from the West end up in Russian weapons.
And to the people who are the kind of casual onlookers who will say, who cares about a bunch of microchips being sent to Russia? It's not weapons, it's not bullets, it's not missiles. How important is something like the strike force?
I think it's critically important because the microchips aren't themselves the missiles or the drones, but they are necessary to make the missiles and drones go. So, they may not be lethal, but they end up in items that are lethal. So for us, making sure we're doing everything in our power to reduce, stop, delay that flow is our #1 priority.
The FBI and other U.S. authorities are investigating companies and their connections to Kremlin spy agencies.
I don't think this is just individual entrepreneurs in Russia that are obtaining these parts. This is a government-sponsored, state-sponsored effort to procure items for the Russian war machine.
So far, the strike force has laid charges in at least 16 cases, some against Canadians.
Unfortunately, I think this is, I don't think this type of problem knows sort of geographic boundaries.
As for Canada, it doesn't have anything resembling a task force like this. The RCMP told us it hasn't laid any charges for sanctions violations involving supplying parts to Russia, either. But according to Axelrod, Canadian authorities are working with his team and other international partners. And that company I'm looking into, Alberton, it appears to be finding a way around those efforts. And here's how it could be doing that. Even though it's a British Virgin Islands company, it appears to be using the Toronto address as its business address to purchase parts in countries like China, Taiwan, Malaysia. And then from those countries, the parts shipped to Russian companies. They never pass through Canada.
Why wouldn't a company just from China sell those goods to Russia directly?
In other cases, it might just be to try to avoid or evade the sanctions of other countries. So maybe avoiding scrutiny from US law enforcement or UK law enforcement. Having a Canadian address and a Canadian company can sometimes lend a veneer of legitimacy to companies doing this kind of business.
So who is behind this business? When I checked who Alberton's director is in the British Virgin Islands, the name Kristalla Kirkalari came up. She's an Australian national mentioned in over 700 confidential documents from leaks of offshore financial and legal records. Those leaks have exposed a trail of billions in dark money, leading to the Kremlin and Russian President Vladimir Putin himself.
Since we've been working on this story, Alberton appointed a new director.
This is one of the things that raises some eyebrows in terms of this company and their activities, because while it is perfectly legitimate to have an incorporation in the British Virgin Islands, using someone who's been in the offshore league suggests the use of something like we call a company formation agent, so someone whose sole purpose is to be the front person for these kinds of companies, which again is legitimate and is legal, but when you look at the other people who are associated with that person, it makes you wonder who else they're doing business with and why everyone's flocking to this one individual. And this is actually a known indicator of money laundering and sanctions evasion.
The British Virgin Islands government told us they don't comment on individual breach reports of international sanctions. But what about that Canadian address for Alberton that appeared on the Russian import data? I've now learned it's the address of someone named Edward Poboreshkin. I'm trying to get in touch with them.
You have reached the voicemail box of Edward Poboreshkin.
Hello, this is Ben Maku from CBC News. We've been emailing.
In those emails, he confirmed he was the agent for service and denied any involvement with Alberton's business. He said his last contact with it was 9 years ago. Adding that his address is part of the public record and he cannot control if anyone decides to use it.
As an agent for service, you should be in, I'd say, at least annual contact to confirm that the company that you're representing continues to be accurate.
Michael Otto is a corporate lawyer in Ontario. His law firm acts as an agent for service for several international clients.
So if your personal or business address showed up on Russian customs data and it was being used by a company that you had become the agent for service for, what would your reaction be?
Yeah, we would immediately notify the principal, the entity that we're acting for agent, and say that we're resigning and effective immediately.
Poboreshkin didn't reply as to whether he has resigned as agent for service.
I think for Canadians, understanding that Canada can and is used for illicit finance and trade purposes is really important. So the people who are subject to, for instance, drone strikes in Ukraine, if any of that technology is being facilitated from Canada, there's a direct line between the Canadian economy and the deaths that are occurring in Ukraine.
How then to explain why a suburban Toronto address seems to be mixed up in a plot to send millions of dollars worth of microelectronics to Russia?
The truth lies somewhere between the Kremlin, its clandestine operations, and a Caribbean island.
Ben Maku tells us the majority of these microelectronics come from China. That includes components that are made or designed in the West that are either made by a Chinese factory or knocked off by Chinese companies. China says it's not shipping military-grade goods to Russia, but the reality is a lot of it is dual use. Up next, a fishing net brings in a sizable catch.
He said, "What is it?" I said, "I don't know yet." All I know is big.
The hefty tuna that caught them by surprise in our moment. This is one gigantic tuna. Fishermen discovered it in the Bay of Chaleur, New Brunswick. They were trying to catch salmon, but nature had other plans. At more than 700 pounds, their incredible catch makes our moment.
Go ahead, man. We've never ever fished that there before. I think we caught our own anchor. So it got harder to haul, harder to pick up. I could see it was a big fish. He said it was over here. Ethan saw the head first. He said, "Holy." He said, "What is it?" I said, "I don't know yet." All I know is big.
Then we pulled it up and the head was big, you know. And Earl said, "I don't think it's a salmon." I said, "No, I don't think so." And we saw the yellow fins and I knew it was a tuna then.
It was already dead, no movement, like, you know. My mother would always say, this is our grocery store. Our grocery store is the ocean. All those things that feed us. Everything that comes from the ocean. If I have more than what I can eat, then I have to share it.
Save those for your friends.
So we're going to share it with the community.
You get the sense of wonder and surprise in their voice. Well, Earl's been fishing for 52 years, and he says he has never pulled in a fish as big as that. That is the National for June 28th. Join me Sunday for Cross Country Checkup on CBC Radio and CBC News Network, and later that night, right here for the National. Have a great Saturday.